Someone I ran into last night said, we had a Lydia Tarr Halloween party. And I said, well, what did you come as? And he said, the accent. That word with the accent, the only language it makes sense in, weirdly, Hildur told me. And when we met, she said, well, you know what that means in Iceland? I said, what? She said, it means tear.
That's right.
Yeah.
See, we always knew that. See, tar in Icelandic means tear.
Yeah. I wrote this script for Kate. I've never written a script with an actor in mind, ever, for very obvious reasons. You're either, because it can be reductive for work you've seen they've already done.
They might be dead by the time you get to make the movie.
They could be dead. Yes, that's a valid point. Yes, Kate is a decent performer, you know, but she has the mind of a filmmaker, and she looks at a project in a holistic way. And those conversations are very big and also very specific, and the kind of collaboration that anyone would dream of having with anyone in whatever capacity. And so when I started writing this, for whatever reason, Kate just sort of appeared, and I couldn't get her out of my head. So that was it. I mean, by the time I finished the script, it was inconceivable that anyone else would play the role.
I first read Todd's screenplay for Tar. We made the film a year ago. I probably read it 6 months before that, a year. It seemed like Todd, when did I first read the screenplay for Tar?
You first read the screenplay for Tar on August 8th at about 5:15 p.m.
It's true, I read it very, very quickly.
On 2020, that's when it was, and I was sitting there with like an hourglass waiting until you finished reading it.
Time is the thing. Time is the essential piece of interpretation. You cannot start without me.
I'd been thinking about this character for about 10 years. The closest thing that a person that's wielding power that can be dramatized quite simply is in front of an orchestra. And it's a picture of a pyramid. She's literally at the tip, that fulcrum.
Well, it started with the music. I mean, interrogating why is it the Mahler Fifth? Why has she saved that for last? What is it about that piece of music that means so much to her that she is so frightened of? I said to Todd, I'm very slow as an actor, so can I just spend the first few days just walking past camera, back a shot. There's a lot of transitional, connective shots. Let's just do a few of those, and because there's a lot to do in this role. And then I always knew the bad news was coming with Todd, because he'd go, here's the thing. And he said, we're going to lose the orchestra in Dresden, and we have to do all of the conducting first. And I was like, Stella! But it was a gift.
Yes, yeah,
it was a gift because I started with what she loved. I started with what she did, where her identity was bound up. And I realized the stakes. Because when we lose what we love, when we lose our identity, without the music, who is she? And working with that orchestra, I mean, they had to act, I had to conduct, Nina had to play the violin, and we worked with an amazing
And we would never have had the players in the orchestra.
No,
the players in the orchestra actually became integral to the film and and continued all the way through the film.
Amazing.
The real work for us, and I think you would agree, was really talking about the character herself. Where did she come from? What was her history? What wasn't her history? What was concocted? What wasn't? And then both of us being sort of excited the way a young person is when they first catch fire about something, like, oh, did you see this thing about Gergiev? The thing blah, 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 blah. And we were, no, yeah, but the thing is when Bernstein was over there, and it was that kind of conversation where it was really alive for us.
I mean, I've never had such an extraordinary collaboration. When I read the screenplay, you thought, you don't change a syllable. It was so impeccably structured from a musical sense, from a psychological sense. But then Todd, as a director, it was almost like someone else had written the screenplay. Like other directors would say, no, I imagined it this way, this is it, this needs to happen in order for that to happen. No, please, trust me. Whereas Todd would say, I don't know. Who wrote this? So we'd go, for example, the first scene of the movie is Lydia backstage before she goes on for this very long interview, there were all these cutaways to people with unwrapping sweet wrappers and tops being twisted off bottles and seats flapping down and pencils being sharpened, and because she has an acute sensitivity to sound. And when we came to do it, I said, so you're doing all these cutaways? He said, oh no, that was just a placeholder. So there was not an ounce of preciousness, and your vision for the piece never wavered. The architecture was so clear, the camera was always in the right place. But you would watch, like a hawk, like what every single person was doing, what the production design, where the light was coming from, how the light was going to change by 4 o'clock. And you were so alive to all of those offerings that it was, everybody brought their best work to it.
How's the writing going?
Not so well. I keep hearing something. I didn't base her on any one person. Obviously she's an American, and as Todd was saying, she has a constructed history. And I listened a lot, strangely, to Susan Sontag.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, who is a really razor-sharp, absolutely authentic public intellectual? And I thought a lot about Susan Sontag.
And there's a really tiny thing that Kate does where the Sontag shifts, and it's really just that moment, which is when you go home and Tony's there. It's just, Sontag's gone.
Right.
I know more about this character than I should ever talk about. I can tell you her street address where she grew up. I can tell you its proximity to Fresh Kills, the largest landfill on Earth where her father worked. I could talk about the smell of the garbage coming through those windows.
She's very detailed as a director.
Hopefully there's room for people because they don't know those things, but we needed to know those things. Kate and I needed to know those things. And we talked about her childhood. We talked about what her life was like at school. We talked about what the seminal moments in her life were, one of the transitional moments into music from, say, sports,
I think she was deeply bullied.
And deeply bullied.
Sometimes backstory can feel like personal preparation, whereas somehow as a director you were able to make that stuff manifest. So it wasn't just stuff that we were writing in our notebooks as actors. We wanted to bring it into the subtext. The subtext is very, very thick in this film, and that was the joy. It's about the inescapable sense of who we are. For a lot of people in contemporary culture who have been invisible for so long, identity is a really, really important thing to grapple with. And so I think it's a really important conversation. But then it's like you don't want to run from yourself too. I feel like we're in this really potentially positive transitional moment as a species. And I think Tar speaks to a moment in a woman's life when she is moving inexorably, as we all are, towards death, and we try to outrun that very thing. Like we try to outrun the unpalatable sides of ourselves, that we try to hide. The thing I love about the film is that we see things that the character doesn't see about herself. And I think that she does things that we often, maybe perhaps in our dark moments, think about doing, or we might do and hope no one saw it. We're all flawed.